Hideyoshi's invasion of Korea marks the only military conflict between Japan, Korea, and China for over 6 centuries. Now, if he means 1368 to 1841, we're really talking about nearly 5 centuries. But so be it. One conflict in 5 centuries that's extremely peaceful. The question is, was historical Asia really this peaceful? And was China really this peaceful when it was powerful? So what happens is that Kang adopts the chronology of wars in China through successive dynasties. This chronology is widely used by Chinese scholars. And this chronology lists 831 campaigns in that time span. So how does they reduce 831 campaigns into one war? And then in table 5.1, he lists 6 major wars of conquest in historical East Asia. So Chinese invasion of Vietnam, 1407 to 1428. Second, Japanese invasion of Korea, the Imjin War, 1592 to 1598. The third, the Manchu conquest of China, 1618 to 1644. The fourth, Manchu invasions of Korea from 1627 to 1637. And fifth, Chinese conquest of Xinjiang between 1690 and 1757. And the sixth one is the Opium War. Now then, with this list of 6 major wars, then Kang further reduces them to only 2 interstate wars. And how does he do that? He counts only only wars with Sino-sized states or North-sized. So which means that China, Korea, and Japan, and Vietnam. Okay, so somehow we get 2, because on page 1 he says 1. That's okay. So even 2 wars in nearly 5 centuries, that's damn peaceful. Now the problem then is, of course, as Peter was just saying, that we really have to restore the centrality of Central Asia. Many people have been saying that it is really problematic to take a Eurocentric view of world history. Well, when you look at China, then people actually take just a very equally problematic view of Sinocentrism. We only look at Chinese records. Because Chinese records say that those guys are barbarians, they're uncivilized, they have no civilization, and therefore they're not states. And this is what Kang does, is that he excludes all the nomadic entities. And if you only count Sino-sized states, Japan, China, and Korea, and Vietnam, then you exclude all the wars. And then another thing he does is that he also excludes all the wars that do not have a very explicit intent of conquest. Well, it turns out that there's only one war with this explicit intent of conquest, which is Hideyoshi's war. He said that I want to invade main China. Other than that, I am the Chinese emperor. I'm so benign. I love all humankind. If I have to send my armies out, it is really to punish those rebels. I really want to bring peace. So you never find the intent of conquest in Chinese records. So then you can exclude all the conflicts, right? And then another problem is that this is not really peculiar to Kang, so can't give him credit for that. Is that people often would say that we take today's China, presume that that's always been the case, and so whatever happened within today's Chinese boundary, then all count as civil wars. So the easiest cheap shot that people can make about my war and state formation in ancient China, early modern Europe, is that she doesn't really know what she's talking about. She's just looking at civil wars. There's no interstate war. What about balance of power? This is all basically BS. Civil wars. Now, so this is the problem, is that very often people presume if you take today's China as basically this timeless peace, and then you say everything that happened within today's boundary is all based on civil war, then we're really taking what Tilly calls the retrospective view of history, which is very problematic, because you take the outcome and presume that it's always been the case. So what I do then is I take the perspective of history. So you really have to go from the beginning time and move on. So I began with the Spring, Autumn, War and States period, and so since then it's taken me forever to work on this. So since then I've added another 2,000 years of history. Now one thing also, that the names, the terms are very important. I know David was just talking about the Eastern Zhou. I reject that term, because even the term Eastern Zhou presumes that there was the Zhou dynasty actually existed. Zhou cannot even be called a dynasty. And if we presume that we can even accept the legitimacy of the term Eastern Zhou, then we more or less presume that I was just really looking at civil wars. Because And so we really have to look at the claim, I rule all under heaven, versus can I really rule all under heaven? Where does my authority really extend? How far can I go? Can I tell those people in the far corners to actually, can I order them to do things I want them to? Can I get them, mobilize them to go fight for me in war? Can I conscript them? Can I tax them? If you can't, then really there is really no single entity. So this is kind of what I do, is essentially the claim and effective control. I think Robert was talking about that. So then how should we count wars? If, I kind of say that, Kang basically excludes a lot of these wars. Then it depends on our purpose. Now, one thing is that we want to make a comparative argument. Now, I want to say not just if China was peaceful, but if it was more peaceful than the rest of the world, which means that then I have to really look at the existing data sets. So what do we have now? We have Claudio's long-range analysis of war, Cal, Prio, Absala, and Livy's war involving great powers. Another thing is that because I really look at state formation, I want to see how states were formed, and then maybe also how they were deformed. But at the same time, I also really don't. Now, while I say that Kang essentially makes East Asia very peaceful by definitional fiat, now I can't do the opposite. I shouldn't really make East Asia more warlike just again by definitional fiat, by just counting everything. That doesn't work either. So earlier we were talking about if the Vikings and the Wokal, would they also should they be considered as kind of states in formation too? I think we have to kind of establish a threshold. Because also I want to look at state formation, so I really cannot use Claudio's long-range analysis of war, because that project looks at war events and doesn't really care if these entities even maintain certain state level capacity. So I can't do that. That leaves me with only Cal, Prio, Livy. Now, of course, today, the problem with them is that if the long-range analysis of war, it makes no distinction between states and non-states. Then the problem with Cal, Prio, and Livy data set is that they make too sharp a distinction between states and non-states. So like today, Somaliland is not recognized. Taiwan is not recognized. Kosovo, if you are recognized by the EU, then okay. Then you're a state. So essentially, they follow today's distinction, making a very sharp difference between states and non-states. And the most important thing is not really your capacity, but international recognition. So if we really look more carefully at what Kang does and also Cal criteria, it turns out that he's not really that far off. Other than bringing in the intent of conquest, which doesn't really exist in the Cal data, he actually the Cal data set would have treated all the barbarian, quote unquote barbarian entities as non-states, and in fact, the Cal data actually treats the entire Qing China as an extra system actor, because the Qing China was not recognized by the European world. So this, I guess, brings us back to the importance. Should we really follow this particular standard of international recognition? And the Cal data set also says that uncontested expansion into the territory of an independent non-system member by itself does not constitute a militarized action. Well, that just justifies all the European cases of colonization. So then, how should we really can state then? I think we should exclude diplomatic recognition, throw that out. But there are other criteria that I think I should keep. 500,000 population. So then the Vikings, sorry, they don't count. And define territory. Define territorial space. I would say that they really have to basically be able to maintain certain sense of territoriality. That doesn't mean that whatever I have, I've always had that. We can accept that territoriality has been fluid in history, that they change, that I can win and lose battles and win and lose territory. But still, today I maintain, I send my armies to guard this particular piece of territory. I lose it, but still, there's a sense of territoriality, and that is important. And political independence. and sovereignty in terms of independence of foreign policy, so domestic and foreign independence. So I want to keep actually all of these standards. So in that sense, then what matters is if a political unit, whether it is a sedentary or nomadic entity, and whether it is the central kingdom in the divided era or central states, possess an organized fighting force under centralized command, which claimed political independence and territorial sovereignty and extracted the wherewithal of war from its populations. So, and then the states then refers to the administrative, fiscal, and military apparatuses with the emperor or top leader, and the central court at its head. Essentially, then stateness is a continuum, a matter of degree. It's not yes, no. And today, when we look at a lot of states, we actually look at high level of states capacity, low level of states capacity. So more or less, this is what I do. But then also think that we should retain the category of non-states. So those that don't really meet the threshold, 500,000 population, and then also they may not have sufficient independence. And for example, if there's a war between China and a branch of Mongols that fought in defiance of the top Mongol leader, then I would count that as an extra-state war. And Kang actually does that. So sometimes, you have governments in exile, and they also look at rebels. But for a lot of, for example, for governments in exile, if they can maintain independence, and then you also have these small forces, but they were directed by a representative of the central government, then Kang actually counts that as a state actor. So essentially, this is what I want to do. Now then there's a problem. I began doing this project actually many years ago, and I'm still stuck. Because if you do not rule out by definitional fiat, 99% of the 831 campaigns, and you really want to look at every single entity, every single political entity, when it goes from, for example, being a rebel, just a rebel group, into a state-like actor. And when it exists from the state actor status and become a non-state actor, if you try to look at every single political entity and you look at the entry to and exit from that status, well, I don't know if it is feasible, so I'm stuck. And so, I come back to this in a little bit. And then, of course, there's another issue of missing data. I'm really not comfortable with the idea that we can really do this multiple imputation, because whatever data we have available, they are really not reliable. We know that, as I said, even today's China's data are not reliable. They quote their economic data. And even, how many people protested in the street yesterday, we don't know. Even, with all the modern technology. So I'm a little, okay, 3 minutes. At the same time, I'm following what Chris said also, that we have to maintain a high bar. And at the same time, we really do not want to inflate the war-pruneness of China. So then it means that essentially, so what I did with the Spring-Autumn War and States period was that you don't count the war unless you have 1,000 battle deaths, right? And if an army was, one size army was more than 10,000, which means even the 5% casualty rate would already on each side would already meet the 1,000 battle death threshold. So that was what I did earlier, and so I think I probably have to follow more or less the same thing. I'm not sure if I could do better. Now, and then another thing is we have to keep in mind that we count only those conflicts with 1,000 battle deaths or more per year on all sides. What about those battles, or what about those combats that had 999 battle deaths? And what about so many cases? Again, this goes back to the centrality of Central Asia. Chinese Empire, when they were dynasties, when they were united, they would always send armies outward to Central Asia to try to control Central Asia. Except many times they didn't even meet the enemy. They ran out of food, and they had to come back. So, do we say that China was peaceful because repeatedly they failed to meet the enemy, or repeatedly they didn't have? And I think that more or less they could. And whenever there was direct confrontation, they would meet the casualty threshold. But when you mobilize, you actually send an army, and because there's nomads, they could just avoid battle. So does it mean that China was peaceful? Which means that I would also have to look at militarized interstate disputes. And so, my last minute. So essentially, I want to thank Chris for always including me on various occasions, So I'm kind of stuck. I don't really know what to do at this point. I spent only actually 3 months on working on the spring, autumn, and warm states war data. And when I started, I imagined that, okay, 500 years versus 2,000 years, it would just be 5 times more of my time. No. It's just way too complicated. So I'm not sure to some extent. I already decided to kind of divorce the quantitative data from my qualitative historical research and just proceed with my qualitative history and set aside the data set. But one of these days, if I come back to this, how am I going to proceed? Is it worthwhile to take this very nuanced approach, really looking at every single political entity and examine its entry to and exit from the state actual status? Is it worth it? And also with all the missing data, and I'm not very comfortable with the idea of multiple imputation. What else you could do? And I can't really use all the iconographic pictures either. And so I guess let me stop here.
Okay. Thanks, Victoria. Questions, but we'll have discussion at the end after we have the other papers. So we have Ian Anderson.